core, the Earth is core, and the sky has cleared, and you see the Me'orot for the first time. And we know it's discussing it from an Earth perspective because it says the two great Me'orot, the one for the day and the one for the light. And there's only one place in the universe where the sun and the moon look the same size, and that's from the Earth, because the sun has a diameter that is 400 times the diameter of the moon, but the moon is 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun. So parallax makes them match exactly, which is intriguing in itself, because it lets you do a lot of astronomy that you couldn't do otherwise. So anyway, so, that's generally kind of one of the two things that are interesting. But here is the proof that there is no God, even though you can't get the DNA twice by chance. Because why? Because there are infinite Earths and parallel universes, and they really exist. It's not a question. They really exist. Now, this is the most widely sold science journal, probably by a factor of 10 and maybe by 100, because it's not peer-reviewed, which means it's cheap. Peer-reviewed journals are expensive because it's expensive to do the work of peer-reviewing. You have to send the article out, you have to get it back, you have to analyze it. If the editor likes the article, they publish it. Scientific American, infinite Earths and parallel universes really exist. And they talk about it in the text, but they don't want you to miss the argument, so they show it to you in 4-color printing in the picture. Cosmologists infer, oh dear, it just changed. Heroes really exist, but now they infer. That's a problem. Cosmologists infer. That's embarrassing, actually, because this is the world's most widely read science journal. So you wonder why people are going to the beach on Rosh Hashanah and McDonald's or Chinese food on Yom Kippur. You can't blame them. They read this stuff, and everyone reads it because you can afford it. You can't afford to, unless you're very well-to-do, you can't afford to subscribe to Science or Nature. They cost so much more, and the details are so intricate. Well, this takes them and slashes the information around, so it's like a little bit like pablum. Cosmologists infer and I want you to listen enough to hear the bizarre logic. Cosmologists infer the presence of these other parallel universes by scrutinizing the properties of our universe. These properties include, and then they list the forces of nature, which are just right for life. Not for forming life, but for sustaining it. These properties include the number of time dimensions, the number of space dimensions, etc., were established by random processes during the birth of our universe. Yet they have exactly the values that sustain life. That suggests the existence of other universes with other values that don't sustain life. Do you hear the logic? I guess you don't. The fact that our universe is perfect is the best, strongest proof at the moment that there are other universes. String theory doesn't do that. The fact that our universe is perfect is the scientific evidence that there are other universes with other laws that aren't perfect, and guess why we're in this universe? Because it's the perfect universe. There are a lot of losers, and one's going to win. And obviously you have to be in the winner, because you happen to be in the loser, you're not there anymore. The logic is that our universe it's mind-boggling. These have exactly the same values that sustain life. That suggests other universes with other values. It doesn't suggest anything of the sort. Make sure, I would hope that you could convince your other universe, assuming you go to a universe that has some level, you have to have some level of brains, I would assume that you could at least at that argument, you could convince, even after a few beers at 3 o'clock in the morning, that it doesn't make sense. But that's the argument. The biggest argument is that we are perfect. And the universe, right from the beginning, the universe is set up for complexity. If you think about it, just from atoms, ATOMs. An atom has a center, which has protons and neutrons, and then around it, and the neutrons have no charge, and the protons have a quite conventional plus charge, and then around it are electrons. And the electrons have a negative charge. So if you have one proton, like for hydrogen, so you have one electron out balancing the charge. But what's interesting is a proton weighs 1,835 times heavier than an electron, but they have the same charge. That's bizarre. Because normally, if you, let's say, you get yourself a brand new Alfa Romeo, and you're standing, you pull up to the red light, the guy behind you bumps. Brand new. You just take it home to show your wife. Now, this actually happened to me, but it wasn't in my Alfa Romeo, it was in his. And I was real clever. And so I didn't bump him, but I passed him on railroad tracks, and he was making a left turn. Of course, I did the right thing, passing on the left. He only passed on the left. Crash. He didn't get to show his wife the brake. He was bringing the car home to show his wife. Okay, but let's go back. So you got your new Alfa. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. He's a nice guy. He took it. He called the police, and he said they seem like they're nice guys. They don't seem that they're drunk, etc., etc. So it was cost me. He's a new car. In any event, so you got your new. You pull up to the front, and the car pulls in back, and stuff like bang, he hits you. Okay, you know what happened? He backs up, bang, hits you again. Backs up, hits. Well, this time you get up, you're furious, and you step out of your car, and you discover he's 1,835 times bigger than you. Oh, it's no problem. I'll get it fixed by myself. The likelihood of a particle of mass that has 1,835 times the mass of the identical charge opposite it is slim. But if electrons weren't almost as light as nothing, you couldn't form molecules. And which then molecules form complexity, which form you. The universe, from its very inception, is designed for complexity, even in an atom. And from there it goes even further. So anyway, that's there's lots of other things that are interesting. The position of the Earth in the solar system. There are aspects of the Big Bang. Most of my website, many of these things are built in great detail and words on my website. So I don't know. Do you guys have my website access or not? It's not. You guys all have them? Yeah, yes, no? So I just pass it around, and what's left over just send it around. And so we just send it around, and they stick together. If you want, don't worry. So, okay, so we have to end in about 3 or 4 minutes. You guys, questions, yeah, now questions, yeah. Yes, questions, no questions. This question, this question. Well, there's a guy in back who had his hand up first.
Do you believe that Adam was the first man?
I think Adam was the... If you go to my website, I have a whole thing on the science of God. I have chapters on this. I put it this way. Adam was the first Homo sapiens sapien with an neshama. Okay? The Ramban... No, in Kilayim, I think it's the 8th mission. It says, Adnei HaSedeh, the master... Chayot. The masters of the field are animals. Straight statement. Now, what profession masters a field? Well, what would you say? It's not a trick question. What would you say? What?
Human.
Well, what profession, I say?
Farmer.
Yeah. Farmer. Yeah, farming goes back 10,000 years. So these farmers were animals. Rabbi Yossi says you have to bury them like a dead human because you can't tell them apart. Now, the commentary that they were dead gorillas is almost embarrassing on the commentator. If anyone thinks a dead gorilla looks like a person, my suggestion is new glasses or new Mishnah, okay? There were beings that existed that were farmers. It's interesting, the glyph in Chinese for man is a field across with a man above it. It's also the symbol for men's room, which is useful because I worked a lot in China, and knowing the symbol of men's room is very, very useful. Although you can smell it also because they save the urine, the wet goes to pour it on the fields because it's so much nitrogen. So you can smell your way, smell it. Not denigrating it, I'm just saying. That's it. So there were beings at some time that were animals. It's a straight statement. It wasn't were they or weren't they, but they were not humans. And yet they had the ability to develop farming and look just like dead humans. That's not Neanderthal. Neanderthal doesn't look like dead human. It looks like a dead Neanderthal. High forehead, etc. And I'm just saying about the other source that's much more important. Or the Rambam. The Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim. I think it's part 1, chapter 7, talks about beings that were completely human. Adam had sex with them. In the 130 years where Adam and Eve split, you realize, chapter 4 and chapter 5, it's 130 years we became Abraham. And Adam had sex, and the Radak says that they were banim mamash, actual children, but they weren't humans. The kids from this union. They were. But I'm afraid to do it from my books. In any event, here's what I say. When the Science Museum, when the British Science Museum, when the anthropology book, and when your teacher says that people go back 90,000 to 100,000 years, that people invented farming 50,000 years ago, that people buried their dead for the last 15, 20,000 years with food, buried their dead with food and trinkets, the anthropology teacher, the textbook teacher, and the whatever museum are correct by their definition of a person. And the founder of Torah, I'm just not teaching Asa, Noah Weinberg, this brilliant human being, said, in any discussion, the first thing you have to do is define your terms. The museum defines a person as a being that looks like you or looks like me, and it's your brains and my brains. They go back 90,000 years of across the record. Adam had a change. There's a whole section. We didn't get into it today. Well, we did it for a second up there. The neshama changed the world. But so beings that look like you, look like me, your brains go back time, and they're correct. The Bible defines a person as a being that looks like you, looks like me, has your brains and my brains, and has a neshama. And they go back less than 6,000 years. And the museums date it. That's what's so. I tell you, it sounds corny, but maybe I said it at the lecture. I've said it before. I almost fell on my knees and wept when I saw the number on the board, on the wall. The British Museum, 100% secular, dates the change in society. Let that sink in. Let your ears hear what your mouth is blabbed. The British Museum dates a change in civilization, not in physiology, in civilization. They give a date. And the date matches the neshama, which the Bible claims thousands of years ago changed the world. The neshama changed the world. And science demonstrates it. The proof shall spring from the earth. Psalm 84. That's just amazing. I just find that phenomenal, that they're willing to put a date. They don't mention God. Bible is not on the plaque. You know what's describing it. No neshama, no, nothing is biblical. Just the change. Writing. Trading. But the marker is large cities. That's the marker. Because before the neshama, you couldn't have a large city. And I asked the curator, was it a population explosion? And he said, no, that's the conundrum, that's the puzzle. Population explosion goes back to farming. Because then now you have big families. When you're hunter-gatherer, you can't have a big family. So the population explosion goes back to farming 10,000 years ago, 9,000 years, give it a couple of thousand years, 8,000 years, 7,000 years ago, even 6,000, no, about 5,500 years ago. Just a couple of years, right after the neshama comes in, spreads, and bingo, you've got large cities. I mean, how much evidence do you need in the end? It goes time and again, point after point of the Bible that goes out on a limb, comes out to be verified. So, if you end up going to a British university, my suggestion is when you have the argument, spring the extra $30, whatever it costs to get in, and take your friend to the British Museum and point out the date. And yes.
What's your view on climate change?
What's your view on climate change? Climate change has. Is the climate really changed? Look, it's totally what I read in the literature, so I don't have any inside knowledge on this, but we do know that the Earth goes through cycles. That's for certain. There was a time when it was called the snowball Earth, when it froze over, and then it broke free by volcanic actions starting to melt it. So that the climate changes, whether we are doing it or not, is the argument. That's the problem. First of all, if you were concerned about climate change as a personal level, because you have to really work on each person can contribute, the first thing that you would do would become a vegetarian. The floats from cattle, because of the nature of how they digest their food, produces more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than all the cars in the United States. So if you are concerned about climate change, become a vegetarian. Okay, that's what I would say. If it is the carbon, if it is CO2, it's because you're eating meat. You know, that's just it. Yeah.
What do you think about Torah Shabbat and specifically like those Moshe and Sinai? Because they're not written in any text, and you just have to go on the fact that they were passed down from God by the fathers.
It's so interesting because I'm in contact with the man by the name of Ken Mahoney. You get a hold of his movie. His work is exquisite. He quotes